Hi, everybody. We're going to get started with our next session. First of all, if you just got here, you are in Ballroom C, and we are digging into AI and virtual worlds. I am Lori H. Schwartz. I'm your track host today, and we have another amazing session. How many of you are familiar with IEEE as an organization? Raise your hand. All right, so we got some smart people in the audience. I got to tell you, I know that everything's going to be okay because of IEEE. When everyone starts freaking out about technology, IEEE is there to guide us. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Kathy Grice, who's going to moderate this great panel, Advancing and Navigating the IEE Expansive Metaverse. Remember, post about what you're hearing today. We want to hear from you. Feel free to take pictures. And if there's time, we'll do some Q&A, although we don't give you a lot of time, so feel free not to do Q&A and hang out with everybody afterwards. All right, let's have a big hand for this session.
Thank you very much. We're all thrilled to be here. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with IEEE, IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization. Really? Well, yeah. Wide. And we're dedicated to advancing technologies for the benefit of humanity. And you're thinking, whoa, that's a mouthful. But in all seriousness, hopefully you'll enjoy this panel and learn a little bit more about what IEEE is all about. My panelists are, they have day jobs, and they're volunteers. And so they bring to this panel real-world experiences and their industry, and I was going to say lifelong experiences to this discussion. IEEE and its over 400,000 members inspire a global community that we generate publications, education, technical standards, educational opportunities, plus we do new development too in terms of applications. With that said, IEEE was instrumental in putting together the standard. We call it the 802.11. Who doesn't have a cell phone anymore, right? Or a smart device? IEEE was instrumental in terms of allowing a standard for commonality so that one Wi-Fi provider could talk to another Wi-Fi provider. So, going next then, IEEE Future Directions. It drives efforts on current, new, and emerging technologies. And that's where I encourage you to go to booth 606. We've got a lot of fun swag and things, but importantly, learn more about what we do. Current initiatives that we're working on include quantum, low Earth orbit satellites and systems, smart lighting, telepresence, wireless power technologies, and also across multiple technologies in the areas of public safety. Think about first responders, and digital privacy. And I have to say, digital privacy has been a common theme throughout a lot of the talks during the last day and a half. With that said then, connecting the dots to AWE is the new initiative that we launched this year on the metaverse. Let's venture into the metaverse and hear our speakers' personal perspectives. First, I'll call on Daehan from HPE. Over the last day and a half at AWE, we've heard so much about the metaverse, AR, VR, even blockchain, NFTs. Let's take a step back and look at the broader picture. What is your perspective and definition of the term megatrend? And where does the metaverse fit?
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So I work at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I have industrial perspective. It was so cool to listen to previous talk where they featured this movie and all of that. And I think you can run these individually, you can run them even in the cloud. It might be more expensive, but if you really think about running the true virtual reality with a huge number of people, it will require quite a bit of resources. And I just drove directly here from one of the customers. of Hewlett Packard Enterprise customers. I'm not sure if you knew, but we deployed the world's largest supercomputer, which has 74 racks, has about, I think, 9,000 CPUs, about 36,000 GPUs. That's just one supercomputer. And they're running simulations that surpass what is presented here with Metaverse. And it's not that they're better or worse, they're just different dimension. But if you really want to get to the levels of scale that is promised, you really need to build these huge data centers with tons of GPUs, tons of CPUs. Current hyperscalers do that. Azure built the nodes with, I think, about 10,000 GPUs. That's about what people promise. But Kathy really asked me to talk about megatrends. And we've been playing with technology predictions for quite some time. When Lori announced the previous panel, she asked how many people have heard this morning AI. And she said the same thing happened with Metaverse last time. So things are bouncing back and forth. There's always something new and popular. So what we try to do is to predict not only what will be popular, but what will make a difference. And we've been doing it for about 10 years. At the end of the year, we do the score how we've done. But then we realized we're zigzagging quite a bit. And we felt there should be something that is bigger than just, what is popular. So we said, well, what are the real megatrends? And we focus on technology megatrends. There are other megatrends. There are social megatrends, there are economic megatrends, there are ecological megatrends. They're all important and they can be broken down in many parts. But let me focus on technology megatrends. We came up with 3. And it's interesting that Kathy mentioned quantum, because every one of us here have their own, favorite technology. One quantum guy came to me and said, Dan, quantum is megatrend. And it's not. It's very popular, might be extremely important, maybe happens, maybe doesn't, or something quantum inspired happens. But, it's not by our definition of megatrends. By our definition of megatrend, it has to have implications on everything. It has to be adopted and mentioned in regulations by governments, etc. So what we define as megatrends, and I'll stop shortly, are 3. And you might be surprised with these. The first one is digital transformation. You say, well, that's all news. It is all news, indeed, but many technologies are still going through this transformation. Not all have happened. The second one, which is probably at the peak of interest today, is sustainability. All companies are talking about sustainability. They're measuring, they're making promise. Our CEO made a promise, on our behalf now we need to deliver that, when they are going to reach net zero. And then the third one, which a year ago I felt would have been virtual worlds, but I transitioned, I converted quite some time ago. I believe that the next mega trend, which is starting to take off now, just like Lori predicted over there in the back, it's artificial general intelligence. And it's comprised of many nowadays technologies, but it's going into that direction. Whether it will ever reach, we don't know. Like we don't know whether everything will be digitally transformed, whether everything will be sustainable, but that's the direction. I'll pause here to let my esteemed colleagues talk.
Okay, thank you very much. Fascinating that you pointed out 3 different megatrends that I want to encourage everybody to consider. Next up, I have Nick, who's a gamer at heart here. With your interest in gaming and application of digital twins, please describe examples you see with how the metaverse fits into the real world. How can we tell the difference between the digital and the physical worlds?
Okay, so to take the second part of the question first, the difference between real world and digital world, it's a bit of a dichotomy because there are many places where you actually don't want to be able to tell the difference. So in a perfect world, your digital twin is going to do such a seamless representation of whatever it is that it's twinning that the blend, the transition point between this is a physical object and this is my data should be completely seamless. But then to take the opposing point of view, increasingly, especially with the advent of AI and the path that looks like it's headed towards AGI, you also want to know if you're actually interacting with a human, a real thing, or an AI? And that's a problem we don't have a good answer for. I don't know, many of you might have seen the news that there was a professor in Texas that failed his entire class because he asked ChatGPT, did they all use ChatGPT to write the essays? And of course, ChatGPT said, because of the way the question was phrased, said, yes, absolutely, right? But that was not true. And if you actually dig further into it, there's pretty clear mathematical evidence that because of the way large language models work, you'll never be able to predict with 100% certainty whether something was generated by an AI. So I do think we have an emerging problem there that potentially actually blockchain could be a solution to, because if the entity that you're interacting with is registered on the blockchain with some sort of validation, you have some idea, what it is that you're interacting with. Coming back a bit to gaming, I think one thing that digital transformation can learn a lot from is, I guess, what I would call the scrappiness of the gaming industry. I mean, part of the reason that GPUs sort of became such a big thing was because of the invention of the first-person shooter in gaming, which suddenly drove the need for 3D graphics. And that has paved the way for AI, because without those GPUs, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. I mean, you can now have tens of teraflops of processing power on your desktop, which was absurd just a few years ago. So I think the biggest takeaway from gaming is to be inventive and creative in how you deploy the technology, and that's going to help bring the cost down. And right now, one of the biggest stumbling blocks, I think, to digital twins in general is they are incredibly expensive to build, and that really has to change.
Thank you very much, Nick. Next question I've got here is for Javika. With IEEE's launch of a new initiative on the metaverse, what do you see on our adoption into the real world and its use to help address inclusion at a global level?
Thanks, Kathy. So to address inclusivity at a global level, there are several things we could do. I think before I describe everything, I would separate them into 3 different sections. One is about accessibility, and then the second one is about digital privacy and data, all those things. And the third one, I would say, about education, how we can educate people to have inclusivity within the entire virtual world. So when we go to the first one about accessibility, I think the most important one is about accessible technologies. Here I'm referring to the entire infrastructure that goes for the metaverse, including the hardware, connectivity, and anything associated with that. So to have this accessibility should be available to anyone independent of their location as well as their socioeconomic position. So it should be available to anybody, anywhere in the world. And then not only for the rich and smart people in the world. And the other thing, when it comes to accessibility, also we have to address the digital divide that exists right now. Mainly after the pandemic, a lot of girls are staying behind. They do not have the same digital tools and the digital skills that many of us have. So we need to educate them and help solve that gap right now. And we are coming up with another initiative to address that through IEEE Future Directions. Then along with the same accessibility line, about languages, to overcome any language barriers, we could have things that would do instant language translations, so everyone would be able to understand what the others are saying. Then the other thing with the accessibility is to address the issues that some of the people with disabilities would have. We could have larger font sizes or even screen readers, etc., to address, to help these people with disabilities. And also one more thing that we could help is when it comes to data stuff as well, let the users who have their digital avatars, let them customize it according to their preferences, because when you let them customize them, they could help, they can express themselves based on their gender preferences, based on their cultural preferences, as well as body types. And another thing is the data privacy. We need to make sure that we address all these issues related to personal data and the data that goes where. We don't know what's going to happen with our data, so that is also something that we need to address, because knowing that there are issues a lot of people may not access because they know their data will be in jeopardy, so that's something else we have to address as well. And finally, how can we educate people to regarding all these things? Because another major thing that I kind of forgot to mention is the online harassment and discrimination and hate speeches. You know, those things are very important items that we need to address as well. Knowing that, like if I know that I'm going to be harassed online, I will not access the platform. So all those things, we need to have a special, very specific or strict policies in place to address those as well. And when it comes to education, just like how we do in all the companies, we have every 2 years we have to take sensitivity training, you know, all this. We need to have like classes for online training as well, so that everyone, all of us could be digital citizens, you know, and not to harass people. I mean, because the gender bias is there all the time. It's inherent to us, you know, so we need to because of the data that we feed in, the metaverse and any virtual world would be really dangerous for everybody. So we need to make sure that all those things are addressed through education. And through IEEE, we are actually doing many of those things, even with the metaverse. And I know the Standard Association has a lot of webinars and what else, panel discussions, just like IEEE Future Directions. We do address those things all the time. And even I think next month, we are going to have a roundtable discussion on metaverse, and we have white papers that are coming up to address all these issues. So these are some of the things that we could do, and we are doing right now to address inclusivity. Thanks.
Wow, Javika, that's so powerful. And I can see you're personally invested in this. And I want to encourage everybody, right, in your everyday life, whether you're looking at your cell phone, social media, take into consideration the points that Javika made, and very impactful, so thank you on that. So, okay. Tom, we have a very special guest here, Tom Coughlin. He's the IEEE President-elect, so effectively January 1st, 2024. He will be the president of IEEE, and a special guest here, a surprise guest actually. And so we're very honored to have you, Tom. You have such a rich experience, both in industry and from a consumer application perspective. As the 2024 IEEE president, you have an opportunity to influence through IEEE how the physical world views the metaverse and its implications on humans. What are your predictions on humans with respect to the interaction with the virtual and digital world?
Well, these are all, I mean, so technology is a human thing to do, you know, and all the things you see out on the exhibit floor and all the presentations and stuff, those are manifestations of human activities, you know.
And it's not a digital twin.
It could be a digital twin, but you could, we're not that good yet that you can't tell, but someday we will be. And this is, and the thing is, what can we do that is going to deal with issues like Javika brought up, you know, that can, because IEEE is one of the largest standards organizations in the world that can help us to get interoperability, to get open source solutions, for instance, that can allow people to build you know, new platforms that enable people to create wealth and new opportunities. Technology is there. The things we're doing here, which is to basically sort of project our own image into an artificial world, right, can help us to understand, I think, ourselves, as well as to help us understand and interact with the world in new ways, and to do things faster. So augmented reality, right? So are we ever going to get to an augmented reality you can't tell the difference between a human? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. They could be used for good or bad, because human beings have both in them. But if we can find ways in which we can focus on the good stuff, what is it we can do to enhance our own capabilities? We will create new types of jobs and careers, new activities that do not exist now, that will come into existence because of these new virtual capabilities. They will allow us to design products faster. We can run simulations in extreme environments that would be destructive of physical stuff, and we can do it faster. We can use AI itself actually to help reduce bias, even by creating synthetic data that can overcome potential biases in data itself. There's all kinds of interesting things we can have here. And I think that there's possibilities in an organization like IEEE. We've got a lot of content, various types. If we can apply artificial intelligence to that, and also find new ways in which we can express that information, I think there's new vistas of knowledge, experience, and new discoveries that this kind of thing could do. And so it's one of the things I'm seeing. I would really like to make that one of the priorities that we do in IEEE is, can we do things that can leverage artificial intelligence, but also, ideally, things that also could use new ways in which we can experience, explain, and learn about the world around us, whether it's real or imaginary.
Are we real right now? I mean,
I feel pretty real.
okay. Do I want to pinch you? No. Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. That's very interesting. So another question I have here then is based on everybody's discussion. What about infrastructure? How do we address that?
You mean how much stuff it takes to do this?
Yeah.
Well, it all depends what you're trying to do.
Well, I don't know. In terms of like how do we manage, right, the metaverse and the connections between digital and physical?
Yeah, so that's my company's job. And I mentioned this supercomputer, the world fastest. It's exascale, 10 to 18th flops or exaflops. And not just us, but other companies are growing. But it's not only how big these computers are, but how efficient they are. That's where that sustainability part comes into the game. So that's why supercomputing organizations, they started measuring not only how many flops you have, but also how much energy they consume. So there's a trend that you use as little energy as possible. So that's in the cloud or in the data centers. And then there's also at the edge, that is where all these goggles are and other things are. And but to be able to connect the two because of this huge amount of data to make all these gamings and digital twins real, one needs to learn at the edge and pass only learning, not all the data. So there's a lot of inference at the edge, a lot of inference and training in data centers. So that's the quick answer.
Well, the other thing you mentioned is sustainability. So there's whole new architectures that are being developed both on in embedded devices, but also in data centers. For instance, I'm a storage and memory guy. So one of the biggest uses of energy is moving data around, like in a data center. Some servers is like 60% of their energy is spent doing that, right? So if we can find ways to process data closer to where it lives in the memory or storage, that's a memory storage guy, we could do an awful lot to reduce the energy consumption for doing some of these things. So, and this is some of the things also that, technologists, we're helping to make the hardware and the software to manage these things, and hopefully finding new methods. The interesting thing is, can AI help us to do that better? Could they become our assistant? The prior session, the guy was talking about you have these little agents that walk around with you, penguins, ducks, whatever. Maybe they could also be your laboratory assistant, if you will.
So there's never been more distributed computing power than we have right now, right? We're all plugging our little supercomputers in and charging them overnight. And there was a paper I was looking at just yesterday where they were positing that you could actually train a large language model on the data it had acquired that day on your smartphone overnight while it was charging. And that's a pretty interesting distributed way of looking at it, right?
That's very personal training.
Yeah, if we can tap, truly tap into the edge with devices like this and support it with the supercomputing in the center, then I think that opens up a pretty brave new world.
Yeah. So another thing, Kathy, we have something called industrial metaverse. So they are not the entire world, it's just specific for certain applications. And then also, when you talk about hardware, people are developing AI chips, just specific for those applications, so that way we can help with the infrastructure and probably the power issues, memory issues, all those things by socializing for applications.
Oh, thank you very much. We are out of time. I can't believe it went by so quickly, but I appreciate all of your time and interest in today's panel. I want to thank my panelists here, and I want a takeaway for you. Think about everything we talked about and bring it back to your own personal lives here and see how you interact with the real world and the digital world. So thank you very much.
All right, let's have a big hand. Thank you guys so much.